I'm Stephen Foskett, the organizer of Tech Field Day. We're here in Austin, Texas with Platform9 Systems. Around the table are a group of independent writers and speakers who specialize in enterprise technology. They've been brought in from around the world to ask questions and learn about this technology. To find out more about Tech Field Day, go to techfieldday.com. And to see more videos like this, go to youtube.com/techfieldday.
We're going to move on to the last stage in the cloud infrastructure journey we laid out at the beginning of this presentation. And that is the so-called serverless computing paradigm. Now, the genesis of our contribution to the serverless space, which is our open source Fission project, is actually an interesting story. As we were building out a managed Kubernetes product, which you just saw a few minutes ago, during one of our company hackathons, one of our engineers, Som Vasani, realized that Kubernetes itself offered a lot of the core building blocks that you would need to build a serverless platform. So he used the hackathon to come up with a very simple serverless solution in a couple of days on Kubernetes. And over time, we realized that this is something that we could invest in and bring to the community for mutual benefit. So Fission is our open source alternative to AWS Lambda. AWS really started the serverless movement with their Lambda introduction. When they introduced it in reInvent 2014, roughly, to the last reInvent gathering, there have been a lot more services and event sources added to it, and a lot more customers kind of realizing the benefit of using functions as a service, essentially. So they push it further and further up the application stack, while the infrastructure gets pushed further and further below in terms of them having to deal with it. Now, this is great as long as you're wedded to the AWS ecosystem, right? The disadvantages that it has is that you have really no choice outside of that ecosystem. And that comes with its own pricing lock-in and any other ecosystem lock-ins, which echoes back to the earlier points that we made that our customers are looking for. One is an open public standard API and the avoidance of vendor lock-in. So while Fission brings some of the same advantages to developing functions as a service that Lambda does, it differs from it in three key aspects. It can run anywhere. Since it's based on Kubernetes, it can run anywhere Kubernetes can run, from public clouds to on-premise nodes to developer laptops. It is open and extensible, so you can take it and extend it to build any other features that you think you need. Finally, as a side effect, it also helps accelerate the adoption of Kubernetes itself, because you can forget about the underlying Kubernetes infrastructure and focus just on writing functions on top of it, which form the core of your application. Now, the use cases that lend themselves to a serverless solution and which Fission hopes to address tend to primarily be those that are event-driven. So, for example, you can create webhooks that will execute a certain piece of code when a URL is exercised. Similarly, you can also extend the Kubernetes framework itself by writing event handlers to act upon various Kubernetes lifecycle events. But we think that there is more to it than just that. Eventually, we think that a lot of application development itself is going to get to a point where generic API backends for mobile and web applications are going to be moving to more and more of a serverless kind of setup, where the developers focus on just writing those backends with the API triggers and not have to worry about any underlying servers. We've gotten a tremendous response since we introduced Fission to the open source community. It's a GitHub project. We've got a lot of interest in terms of GitHub stars. We've got a lot of community interaction in terms of design discussions and contributions as well. This is hot off the press. We just released it, a week ago? Maybe less than a week ago?
About a week.
And the developer response has been fantastic. So we appreciate and are humbled by all of the inputs we've gotten from the community. But this is kind of our overarching set of products that help address every situation that a customer might face at every point along that cloud infrastructure journey. Not only where they are, but also transitioning to where they want to be.
All right.
So Cody, before you jump into the demo, I just want to highlight a couple of things on Fission and the serverless, highlighting how we use it internally. So with our DevOps, we have Pager. I'm sure you guys use PagerDuty or any of the other paging systems. And Amrish is going to talk about how we operate internally. But one of the ways we have been using Fission is really writing these small functions to connect and integrate different services. So for example, we have an alerting system which goes and monitors, and if, say, your server is down, for example, and we are monitoring it, an operation person needs to be paged. But these are two different systems. Now somebody needs to write code and hook them up. How do you do that? Well, you can run a virtual machine with all the code, but what we instead did was have this framework running, and we have a lot of these small functions which can integrate these DevOps systems internally. So if an alert goes on a system which says the host is down, let's say Nagios, you can then alert a person through VictorOps or PagerDuty by just really writing 5 lines of code. That's about it. So go ahead, Cody.
Yeah.
Just wanted to add that thought based upon what you just said.
Do you have any code examples or small open source projects that you've released that demonstrate how you internally are using Fission, or demonstrate the concept at minimum of how you are using Fission to coordinate multiple external services, SaaS platforms into your own application stack?
So we do have some demos, but this is a guestbook demo that Cody is going to show. But we are happy to also talk about some of the others.
Sorry, so we have a couple of examples that are available with Fission. There is a simple example for how you can build on Kubernetes lifecycle events with corresponding event watchers, etc. This should be part of the GitHub repository already. The GitHub repository for Fission already.
Yeah.
All right.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Rupak and Amrish. Again, I'm Cody Hill, systems engineer at Platform9. And let me jump over to my Fission environment. So again, completely open source product, fission.io. You can go there. There's a link to the GitHub, completely open source. You can utilize it. If you like it, start it. And we're getting a lot of traction there. So this is the GitHub repository. So we do have a few examples in here. We will be adding more and more examples. And to some of the points that Amrish was making was that, yeah, we just launched this thing last week, right? We already had somebody retrofit Fission to add in C# as one of the runtimes on the back end.
As well as PHP.
As well as PHP, right? So when we launched, we said Python, Node.js. Like, that's a good way to get started, right? Somebody said, yeah, I don't like those for whatever reason, right? I want to do PHP and C#. 2 different people. And they've already contributed these back. And then we're going to start incorporating more of these frameworks in, right? So it is growing pretty rapidly. And for me, I'm not a developer. I don't claim to be a developer, right? But I've been a cloud architect for a while and has worn an operations hat. And to me, Fission is exactly what Rupak was talking about, right? So I know I had a difficult time in my careers integrating different systems together, trying to build out a large orchestration platform at General Electric to do our private cloud. I had to talk to, I think, 38 different types of systems that integrated together just to spin up a VM, right? That's the one service that we had, was get a VM, 38 different systems outside of the VMware ecosystem to make that happen. And all of those were some type of, sometimes we had to build custom webhooks, custom APIs, stuff like that. SDKs, we were shelling out to the command line. All this was goofy stuff that was difficult to do. And Fission, to me, is the way of creating a highly available webhook that can do one quick thing to help me do this, right? I don't have to worry about the uptime of this service, because then when my horribly architected service goes down, I can't create VMs anymore, right? And so to me, this is what Fission can do easily with a couple lines of code. Go create a DNS entry. Go create an Active Directory user or group. Create that CMDB entry, right? Put in that monitoring, add the system into monitoring. Stuff like that, to me, is what Fission is going to be used for me, right? Now, developers have this other brain and can do all kinds of cool stuff. But for me, on an operations side, that's what I liked about it. So we're going to jump into Fission here, right? So again, we're going to be using that same cluster that I had talked about before, that I was running that demo, that local cluster, right? So in here, we have this local cluster here. Hey, that TFD cluster finished building that I built in the last demo. It's there, great. And when we jump into this cluster, you'll see that, did I clean up after myself? I didn't. That's bad on me. Let me clean up after my last demo real quick by deleting these namespaces. Maybe they're already gone and I just didn't refresh. Maybe not. Let's see, delete. Okay, so we're deleting these namespaces. They'll get deleted in just a second. Local cluster, okay, it's clean, great. So now we're going to deploy Fission for the first time from GitHub, right? So this is just getting started with the product. Again, this is a open source project. It's not even an alpha release, and we just released it last week. So hopefully the demo gods are in my favor today. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do a kubectl create, right? So the same commands that we've already been using, -f, and then we're going to pull this directly off the website. So fission.io/fission.yaml, right? Pretty simple, right? kubectl create command to the exact same cluster we've already done, and hey, all kinds of cool stuff gets created. Those namespaces will pop back in here, and you'll see that we have a Fission namespace pop in here in a minute. Okay, there it is. So there's our Fission namespace, our Fission function namespace. Great. So now Kubernetes has this concept of running deployments and pods and all of this, and then another concept of services. How do you consume that application you're running, right? You need to expose it outside of Kubernetes, and that's done by a service. So we're going to launch a node port service here. So I'm going to do this exact same command, but then we're going to actually create a node port for us. Fission-nodeport.yaml. Okay, so again, this is all right off the Fission.io website. We're going to create that service. So now we can connect to Fission. So if I did this right, I should be able to, oh, you shouldn't see that yet. I should be able to connect to the namespace here. So the API endpoint for the cluster, the port that I'm running on. And hey, check that out. Fission's up and running, right? We have the Fission API. It's up and running. We just deployed this. Now I want to deploy a very simple application. So we have our guest book. Now I'm on the GitHub repository, right? So if you git clone Fission, we're inside of the Python and then, PWD. We're inside of the Fission and examples Python guest book, right? So all of this code's out there. And there's a simple deployment script here, right? So we have our a Redis system that we're going to deploy inside of Kubernetes so that we have a place to have persistent data being stored. So we're going to use Redis that way, and then we're going to create a couple functions, right? A get function and an add function for this guest book. So we'll do a deploy of this, okay? So you can see, hey, look, all this stuff's being created. I was told this is a normal error by our developer. So if you know what normal errors are, they happen and they're normal. So there's that. So nothing to be alarmed about. So if we come in over here and we refresh, we should now see a guest book. Let me add more rows here. Okay. So in this local cluster now, we have a guest book namespace. Then inside of this namespace, in Kubernetes on the back end, Fission has created this. And
right.
Sure.
I think you are really showing some super neat stuff that not only what you've shown beforehand while this is waiting to come up, I've already thought of ways that I think there was value to creating a development team, so I would have still done it. And I've probably been used, the open source projects allow the containerization of OpenStack. But not everyone's in the business of maintaining a development team focused on infrastructure.
Exactly.
And if I wasn't in that business, you would have been able to provide an ROI, a return on investment, and I could provide that to my executive team or myself if I am one. Right?
Exactly.
What you're showing here, I think, is directly in line with that value.
I just wanted to find out how many of you are seeing containers from your development team and going towards that cloud native applications.
I mean,
And what frameworks have been using? or what frameworks your developers are using? Do you know?
Kubernetes as a cloud controller and things falling into the Open Container Initiative. At the end of the day, innovation is happening in the community and is being repackaged by corporations to consume for those that don't have the staff to contribute upstream, in my opinion, from my experience. I think you guys are a great example. You have a commercial platform and you're contributing open source products, open source projects, and that you are contributing to that means that not only are you trying to sell something to me, which is your right, especially if it allows me to create value in my business, but then it also gives the opportunity that as I want to contribute to innovation myself, or my company, my employees want to, or my partners, they have every ability to add a feature. It's just great, beautiful balance that you guys, what I see your company demonstrating right now is a balance of a way to make money, but also partner with the community at the same time.
Well, that's the idea, and really the vendor lock-in point that Amrish was making with both OpenStack as well as Kubernetes. Kubernetes is new. I know containers are new, but they are coming, and as you said, looks like developers are already developing applications on that, and so we are adding and contributing back to the community, but also providing services around it and handling the infrastructure for you, so you don't have to worry about it.
So one of the big bets that we've made is to double down on the hybrid approach. Now, the advantage with containers, especially with Kubernetes, is that it's kind of hybrid by definition. Your containers don't ever need to know what the underlying nodes are running. But this is why we took that learning back to the OpenStack and virtual machine space as well, because this is the same problem that people have there, where there doesn't exist a solution for it, which is why we contributed Omni.
And I just caught myself that I may have said something that might have taken away from contributions you've made to OpenStack and containers. I mentioned Mirantis and whatnot.
Oh, not at all.
Can you expand on what contributions back to the community that you've made supporting the containerization of OpenStack?
So in terms of the open source contributions that we've made overall in Platform9 managed OpenStack and the derivatives of it, we started by creating the Omni hybrid cloud platform. This is open source. It's contributed back to the community. We've created a couple of other projects that Cody demoed, which is both the lease manager as well as the VMHA, which are both contributed back. In fact, the lease manager is part of OpenStack Big Tent. A lot of the containerization work that we're doing internally is still getting to the point where we want it to be baked before we can give it out. We don't want to be just the guys who throw it over the wall and make it open source and let everybody run with it.
And so just to echo back and make sure I'm hearing you clearly, so what I hear you saying is you have a large code base that you've incorporated in your current platform, and that, did I interpret this correct, as it is a business goal and a business decision that you will be contributing at least part of that back to the community?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for expanding. Sure. Excuse my assumption that you had not.
No problem at all.
Thank you.
So I'm back up and running, and really what I wanted to show is that in this pods view, we have this local cluster, and now we have this guestbook namespace that we just created, right? Inside this local cluster, we also have our Fission functions, right? And so these are other containers running those functions for Fission. And then we also have our Fission namespace, which has also additional containers supporting Fission, right? So all of this is being created in the back end as Kubernetes objects, but the way you consume it is just directly through Fission. So you don't need to really know Kubernetes at all to get Fission up and running, right? So there's a Fission command line tool. So if I actually VI that deploy script, you can see that we were simply doing, so we did some Kubernetes stuff earlier to deploy our Redis cluster, right? Just because we needed some Redis inside of Kubernetes. But the function side of things, right, is simply we said, hey, Fission, create me a function, right? Name it guestbook. And this is the code that goes into that function, that get.py, and create a /guestbook and a get method for it, right? Pretty simple, straightforward. And then again, create a post method for that guestbook as well, right? So very, very simple, a little bit of code there. And then if we VI those, the add.py to create something, again, very small amounts of code to add something into that Redis database, right? So very little amount of code written, and we're able to pull this off, okay? So now, I'm not on the VPN, so I can't go to that local cluster and show you, but I prepared for this. And everyone can play along with this if they want. If you go to pf9.io, and then /TFD, Tech Field Day 2017. I didn't know this was named Tech Field Day 13. I should have changed the short link. But TFD 2017. And we have a guest book here. And please be friendly. This is public. So you can go ahead and add things to this guest book, such as, hello, I'm Cody. And I got added. Somebody wants cookies. Is this thing on, right? This is a public-facing service that's up and running completely inside of Fission to a back-end Kubernetes cluster running on a Redis database.
What was that link again?
PF9, here, let me, pf9.io /TFD, Tech Field Day 2017. There's that link there at the bottom of the screen. And if you jump into that, you can play with this, kick the tires. Again, this is completely open source, so you guys can get the code, try it out yourselves, and really check out some cool functions as a service. Any questions on this, or anything else that you might think, hey, this might fit in, or we might be able to do this with that? Anything?
Will you please or show me either a diagram in a PowerPoint or go to the whiteboard and you do a quick diagramming of the service architecture that you deployed to make that happen and show me how your components support that?
Hey, VP of Engineering, can we do that?
Can you pull up the Kubernetes blog that Som wrote?
Okay.
It should be covered there.
Great. Let me jump over to our blog's site. Apparently, we've done this before.
It should be on the Kubernetes blog. not our blog.
Kubernetes.io?
Yeah. You should just be able to search for it.
IO and then Fission.
Cody, can you increase the font?
Sure.
Yeah, you went to the Fission.
Yeah, let's find this. There we go. This is on the Kubernetes blog.
Yeah.
It went out
like last
2 days ago?
Yeah,
That's
not
right.
even.
2 days ago. Told you this is hot off the presses, right? Is this what you're looking for?
Yeah.
No, is that what I'm looking for?
Yeah. This is what you're these are the droids you're looking for.
I'm looking for a visual representation of
Right.
the service architecture to reinforce my understanding of what you showed.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a great read. It's on Kubernetes.io picked this up, so they're actually putting it on their site. But this is that visual representation of kind of what's happening here, and I honestly can't talk to it at a high level. I'm sure these guys can.
Sure.
Right? Again, I'm not not a developer.
All right. Go ahead.
So what Cody showed was how he was able to add those two Python files, which literally had like 10 lines of code each, and run it. But to actually run it, we are using Kubernetes in the back end, and we have three other services that run along with it to make that happen. So when you create a function, we put that in a environment, what we call as environment. We just put it in a container. So everything is running into its own containers. And what will happen is, if you have more requests coming in, the Fission framework would create functions, these pods dynamically, these containers dynamically, as and when required. So it's dynamic. So you don't have to scale the application, and it will do it for you.
And a follow-up question, as you describe Fission inside of here, which components inside of that diagram would be comprised of, compose Fission, I guess?
So essentially everything above the Kubernetes block there.
Everything above the,
so
everything above the Kubernetes, so the controller, the pool manager,
the
router.
router.
Yes.
So the pods themselves are also Kubernetes constructs, but what Fission is doing is creating these generic pods and specific pods. So the generic pod is essentially just the environment, and the code that you're writing, the function, is what is injected into one to make it a specific function pod that executes your code.
Awesome. Thank you very much for taking the time to show that to me. It really helped me understand it better.
Right.
Absolutely.